the Minnesota Council on Latino Affairs, or NCLA. Welcome everyone, and thank you to the members of the press here covering this conference, and to the Latino partner organizations and leaders here today this morning. This continues to be a great team effort. And I also want to recognize some of our Latino legislators present today, Senator Alice Mann, and Representatives Maria Elisa Perez Vega and Alicia Kozlowski. As we know, political representation matters, and we salute our diverse Hispanic Latino legislators who are making a difference every day in the people's house. MCLA is a non-partisan state agency. Its main role is to advise the legislator and government on policy and legislation to improve the lives of Latinos in the state and to celebrate our achievements and contributions. The Council serves as a bridge between our communities and the government. For 46 years, we have been serving the public by bringing las voces latinas, the Latino voices, to the Capitol to close persistent racial disparities in the state. Today is another proof of that. MCLA is honored to co-convene this press conference with 11 other Latino-led organizations from which you will hear in a little moment. For the second year in a row, we are here to unveil the Minnesota Latino Leadership Alliance's public policy agenda. This consensus agenda is a concrete demonstration of our unity, our strength, and our vision for this state that is our home. We want to ensure that our communities are included and are a part of the priorities of the legislature and this administration as they make consequential decisions for generations to come. Last year, as we launched MiLLA, and with a historic budget surplus, I asked the question, what if? What if investments were equitable for all? By centering our community in policy decisions, MCLA and other Latino leaders advocated successfully for landmark legislation such as driver's license for all, expanding Minnesota Care, a state child tax credit, expanding tax benefits in homestead and for working families, and diversifying the school workforce, among many other accomplishments. Today I ask, what's next? This session will see the first Latino museum in Minnesota and advocate for adequate services and programs in mental health and for our aging seniors. We also want to make sure that elections and voting provisions are more reflective of our communities. In this electoral year, it is important to understand that every 30 seconds, a young Latinx in the U.S. turns 18 and their votes matter more than ever. The main priorities for MiLLA are stated in documents that you can find or that were distributed for you. And they are focused on certain areas: workforce and economic development, education, arts and cultural development, health and well-being, democracy and voting rights, belonging and integration, and a clean environment. Ensuring that the state properly and fairly invests in our communities will result in Latinos taking advantage of economic opportunities and thus making even greater contributions to a thriving Minnesota. So now, I'm very pleased to welcome Irma Marquez-Trapero, the Executive Director of Latino Lead, to outline more of our common work. Thank you.
Muchas gracias, Rosa and MCLA, for the space and also for having all of the organizations here. Again, my name is Irma. I use she, ella pronouns, proud Mexican citizen who grew up in greater Minnesota and proud to be a Mexican standing here with you all today. Latino Lead is a network of leaders working together to empower the Latinx community in Minnesota. We invest in individual leadership development, workforce building, to strengthen our collective power through policy change, and therefore advancing our influence, growing our impact, and building coalitions for positive change. Today, 1 in 20 Latino Minnesotan residents identify as Latino. Nonetheless, our community continues to have advancements in education, government, workforce, leadership, and philanthropy. According to data from the Minnesota Compass, the average income for Latinx households is $18,000 less than the average median household income. This means that 1 in 4 Latino residents live in poverty. In addition, only 4 Latinx in U.S. hold executive officer roles in major organizations, and less than 1 of elected officials are Latinx. This is why it's important. Thank you so much for the folks that are representing us for standing with us today. Additionally, only 1.1 of philanthropic dollars are invested in Latinx-led organizations, despite the fact that Latinos are currently 18% of the U.S. population and growing. Our community believes that we have what it takes to improve and make strides on these statistics that currently do not represent us. We believe that in order to accelerate leadership and representation, we must focus on building our leaders and therefore our community. In addition, we are working with movement partners to create our own narrative that's based on who community truly is. For us, we need to continue to invest in our Latino community through leadership development opportunities and access information resources that are crucial to attaining social and economic mobility in our state. This is why MiLLA is important. This is why the work of our collective is imperative. Our alliance is an agreement of partnership so we can collectively advocate as a community, but also as individual organizations who are already doing amazing things for community. MiLLA serves as a vital mechanism to advancing and the interests of the Latino community and promoting social justice and equity within our state. By uniting diverse voices, expertise, resources, these coalitions can drive meaningful change and create a more inclusive and equitable society for all. Latino Lead has been and will continue to be adamant supporter of the legislation, policies, and initiatives that help close the gaps in our education system. Young Latinx are the fastest growing demographics in Minnesota, but we have continued to fail our 76,000 and growing ELL students. The 2019 NDE State of the Student Report shows that 4-year graduation rate for English language learners is at 65% compared to 88% of white students. Further, only 30% were achieving grade level reading and proficiency in reading and 29% in math. Over the past year, Latino Lead's Education Action Team, which was created to address these concerns, has been fighting for a more equitable ELL program. This has led to more state funding, and our goal is to ensure that our students and families are heard. This year, we continue to highlight further accountability measures, best practices to the Learning English and Academic Proficiency and Success Relief Act. This act would enhance professional development for teachers and administrators, recognize diversity and multilingualism as an asset, and enhance voices of our parents, their students, and our community as a whole. This past legislative session, we also worked with the Office of Higher Education to help pass the Minnesota State Course Placement Practice Review, also known as the Cultural Bias Report. This review will assess and extant policies and practices that negatively impact students economically, their participation in college, their placement in college level courses, and their persistence in completion of post-secondary program. Finally, in partnership with Copal and Nacer, we will be focusing on IT extension for economic development of our fellow immigrant community. At Latino Lead and within MiLLA, we believe that through education, economic development policies, Latinos will be supported and invested in. We need to make sure that our future workforce is well equipped to contribute to the economy. We have an opportunity to develop and train our workforce here in our state so we don't have to rely on other states for these demands. We have everything we need here. Finally, the organizations here today are making a promise to Latinx in Minnesota that we will work in coalition to enforce that our community is well equipped to thrive in Minnesota. With the support of our community, our allies, the Minnesota Latino Leadership Alliance will follow and support bills, programs, recommendations, and initiatives that advance our community as a whole. I would like now to introduce my colleague and friend, Executive Director of ACED, Rodolfo Gutierrez to have a few words about the importance of this alliance and the work that they are leading. Muchas gracias.
Gracias, Gemma. Hola a todos, a todas. Good morning, everyone. I am Rodolfo Gutierrez, and I do have my script, and that's also I'm going to be using my memory. Thank you so much and for being here, and I am really feeling honored to be among all these friends and all these leaders. And as I heard how I need to highlight the MiLLA purpose is the Minnesota Latino Leadership Alliance is really important. Today we can estimate at ASER that we are around 400,000 people who claim of being of Latino descendants. And that is also something really important for us as to promote better access to education, better access to housing, better access to all the services that are there available, regardless of our origin and all that. ASER is a small nonprofit. We will have 35 years of history serving the state of Minnesota with a very singular purpose. We do provide information to everyone who needs it, whoever wants to work with that information. And we've been doing that based on research. But it's a special type of research. It's based on the community, for the community, and with the community. Along these 35 years, we've been providing information for many of our friends who've been working with us several times. Also, some legislators have come to us, and when they came to us, they asked for information to provide that information. We will continue doing so. But also we are an entity that works with the community and for the community. That's why we are supporting this effort of MiLLA. MiLLA is a beautiful kind of evidence that we need to come together. As diverse we are, if we are separating our voices, we are not going to have the results we need to have. So that's why, for me, it's really important to promote this alliance and keep on doing so. Last year, as Rosa mentioned before, it was the first time. Today, we are having the second time. The second year presenting these kind of initiatives. Next, I hope we are going to continue working and being stronger and stronger. So ASER is based on this diversity we see. We are supporting different initiatives that are going to be brought to you by our colleagues and our friends. Among them, the museum. A museum that shows the culture, the diversity of this culture from Latino origin is really important. We do have that diversity in so many ways seen outside there in the streets, in different towns, but we haven't had yet systemic kind of shown. So we are promoting that and we are supporting the initiative that is going to be presented at the legislature this year. We also are supporting our friends from Common Cause in redistricting, creating new rules, new laws that are going to be fair, representing our communities in this state. Because at this time we are not fully represented. We are not really portrayed the way we need to be there. So we are supporting that initiative, and we are really enthusiastic as to what's going to come out. At the time we are going to be working on promoting the voting participation from Latino communities. We heard the 18 years and older people are growing here from Latino origin, so we need more participation. The citizenship is really important as part of this commitment to be better. Also, we are working with COPAL and Latino League in promoting new regulations on the use and acceptance of IT. IT is a very important tool for the communities, regardless of their immigrant status, for them to access business and also to promote more economic development in the state in full. And we are also promoting new regulations on climate change. So climate change is also something that it's in debate, always discussed and always really debated, but we need to know more about that. And our communities, by nature, are protecting the climate, protecting the environment. So we need to really move forward and create new kind of regulations on that and establish better knowledge of what are the effects. Here we are. So ASER is providing information, but also support for this effort immediately. And I know, I don't know, Aaron is here. So who I have to introduce? Jessica. So I am really pleased to introduce Jessica. And Thank you so much, and please pay attention to part of the initiatives we're running today. Thank you.
Buenos dias. My name is Dr. Jessica Lopez-Lyman. I'm an artist and a scholar. Luis Garzón, the first documented Mexican to live in Minnesota starting in 1886, was an artist. He was a musician for a national Mexican band. During a winter tour, he fell ill and stayed in the state. Later, he opened a store on the west side. Decades later, more Mexican and other Latina immigrants came to the west side. For example, the Frias family, who for 3 generations have owned and operated Boca Chica and Taco House. They follow in the legacy of Garzón. To future Salvadoreña businesses like QT on Water Street. All of these folks came to the west side and they understand that art, culture, identity, and commerce intertwine to create community, to create home. Today we come to the People's House to bring forth a new vision for the state. The Minnesota Latino Museum is a grassroots effort to develop a statewide museum focused on the arts and cultural traditions of over 350,000 Minnesotans of Latin American heritage. Led by Neomuralismo de Mexico, a St. Paul-based nonprofit, the museum will be on the historic West Side Flats, the St. Paul neighborhood where the first Latino immigrants migrated to our state. I want to thank Neomuralismo's Executive Director, Aaron Aron Johnson-Ortiz, for leading these efforts. We are grateful to Representative Perez Vega, Dr. Elise Mann, and Senator Pappas for carrying this bill, and to MiLLA for support. Most importantly, we are grateful to Latinx artists across the state, like Gustavo and the community that was just outside in the freezing cold with their alabrijes on the bikes, to the West Side Community Organization and other community partners who believe in this vision. Nationally, Latinos are falling drastically behind in terms of museum representation. While the Institute for Museum and Library Services estimates a total of 35,000 museums, only 20 focus on Latinos. That's less than 0.1%. In Minnesota, Latinos are the lowest funded demographic in arts and culture. Despite these structural inequities, we know that our Latinx community is rich in arts and culture. Following the legacy of Luis Garzón, there has been a vibrant music scene. From Las Tres Hermanas, the Rainbow Sisters, to Augie Garcia, to our very own state representative, Maria Isa Perez Vega, who celebrated her quinceañera for 15 years as a CEO recording artist, a woman in hip-hop with Soto Rico Records. We have a glowing visual art scene where murals by Vietnam veteran Carlos Menchaca in the 1980s have faded into new works by Westsiders Chilam Balam and Ernesto Ibarra, to new murals in Austin, Minnesota, along Lake Street and throughout South Minneapolis. Gustavo Lira, Olivia Levins Holden, Candida Gonzalez, and so many others have partnered with residents to produce work that reflects the beauty of the local BIPOC, working-class immigrant community. Minnesota has a spectacular theater and spoken word scene where wordsmiths like the Palabristas and playwrights from Teatro de Pueblo remind us that another world is possible. From the Dia de los Muertos U.S. stamp by Luis Fitch to public art by Maria Cristina and Javier Tavera, Latinx artists have infused their imagination into every corner of this state. Several Latinx cultural spaces paved the way for this project. From Crearte, Mira Gallery, Art Trujillo, and Electric Machete Studios, Latinx artists in Minnesota, often without financial support, have curated hundreds of exhibitions showcasing the work of emerging and well-established artists. The Minnesota Latino Museum proposed site is on Harriet Island Regional Park and serves as a reclamation project for Mexican residents displaced in the 1950s. When Representative Perez Vega, Neomuralismo members, including poets and elders La Lupe and Teresa Ortiz, Aron's mother, and myself visited the museum site this past fall, we were in awe of this space. Overlooking the Mississippi River, we were reminded how this river was integral to trade routes for indigenous people across the Americas prior to settler colonialism. As I speak on the occupied homelands of the Dakota people, I know that our vision for the Minnesota Latino Museum is one of intersectional healing. The location will offer a space for all Minnesotans to witness and participate in Latinx arts and culture. We look forward to the start of this next legislative session. Support the Minnesota Latino Museum, a statewide space for arts and culture. Support this restorative justice project. Thank you.
Woo!
Yes.
I would now like to introduce John Pacheco, Executive Director of the Latino Chamber of Commerce.
Good morning. Again, my name is John Pacheco. I'm the president of the Latino Chamber of Commerce of Minnesota. I'm very pleased to be here because quite frankly, the Chamber, what we do is advocate on behalf of the Latino business owners, large and small. And you come over here and sometimes you're alone, but having this organization come together the way they are, it really provides the opportunity to have a greater impact for our small businesses. And according to the Deed and Secretary of State's office, we have a little over 9,000 Latino businesses. And as you know, more often than not, we're not quite counting it all. But that's what they report. And the state does $2.2 billion in products and services that they have in contracts. The University of Minnesota does over $400 million. And so the question is what percentage and how much impact is given to the Latino businesses as we look to grow our wealth and our prosperity. And according again to the Department of Administration, there's 88 that are qualified or that are certified to do business. That's out of the 9,000. And so we're here on behalf of the Capitol here, talk about how and when can we look at gaining the numbers that reflect both our businesses and the community. Because it's not only about the Latino community. We provide the wealth opportunities and the workforce for the greater community of Minnesota. And again, it's just about fairness. It's about getting the right opportunity to make a difference in these communities. So on a daily basis, we get calls from our office and say, you know, I understand they're hiring over here. I understand we're building a building over here. You know, where's my opportunity and what can we do? And so again, that's daily basis. And so our community provides that workforce. Our community provides a small business. All you have to do is go down Lake Street or West Side of St. Paul or any one of them that made those streets going. Just think about what happens on University and on Lake Street if Latinos weren't there. I mean, those really kept these vibrant communities alive. And so I hit what I started with, and that is being part of MiLLA is a great opportunity for the small business, for the leadership we have in this room here. And so I appreciate the ability to come and advocate alongside these folks here because it really will make a greater impact for all. Thank you. And now I'd like to introduce Francisco Segovia with Copal.
Thank you. Buenos dias, good morning. First, I would like to extend my gratitude to John Pacheco for the introduction. It is an honor to be here today. I'm Francisco Segovia, the Executive Director of Communities Organizing Power and Action for Latinos, COPAL. COPAL is a social impact organization that operates statewide to improve the quality of life of Latin American families. Our goal is to create a prosperous and inclusive Minnesota that is accessible and enjoyable to everyone, for everyone. COPAL is proud to be a member of the Minnesota Latino Leadership Alliance. COPAL has collaborated with fellow MiLLA members to shape the legislative agenda for 2024, aimed at uplifting the Latino community and contribution positively to the entire state. COPAL is focusing on several issues. We have a postcard with some of the issues that we are focusing on, available for everyone, including the development of a transformative community space called the Latino Center for Community Engagement, or LCCE. This 24,000 square foot space located at 2905 East Lake Street in Minneapolis represents more than just a physical reconstruction. It is a symbol of empowerment for our community, returning land ownership to local residents and reinforcing the historical presence of Latin American community along Lake Street. The LCCE will foster pride and belonging among our young and diverse community by building power and fulfilling their ambitions. It will serve as a vibrant hub of unity, celebration, and cultural exchange, embodying the transnational spirit of our community. COPAL's innovative program will bring the aspirations of the Minnesota Latino community to life. COPAL is also partnering with ACER, Latino Lead, and other advocates to expand access for Minnesota residents to rely on the individual taxpayer identification number, also known as Latine. Enhancing the access to rent and utilities. We aim to create a Minnesota where Latine holders can participate as equals in the state's economy, resulting in healthier, safer, and more stable communities for all residents. Our efforts also extend the critical areas such as healthcare, integration, and environmental justice. As part of MiLLA, we stand behind a comprehensive repertoire of legislation proposed by the 2024 session, aiming to address these and other pressing issues facing our community. As we reflect on the profound impact of Latinos in Minnesota, let us reaffirm our commitment to celebrating diversity, embracing inclusion, and honoring the contributions of all who call our state home. Together, we can build a brighter future and based on mutual respect, understanding, and unity. Thank you for your attention and support as we look forward to a promising 2024 session. I'm excited to the opportunities that lie before us. And now, I have the pleasure of introducing the next speaker, Jovita Morales, the Executive Director of MiLLA.
Buenos días a todos. Good morning. I'm grateful to support our Latino MiLLA in all the agenda that we have. My name is Jovita Morales, and I'm the director of grassroots community called Minnesota Immigrant Movement. Over more than 15 years, MIM has worked with statewide Latinos communities. As you know, passed the driving license bill last year. We came together to build solidarity and movement among Latinos Minnesotans around issues impacting us. MIM has been supporting and working on education, democracy, voting rights, healthcare, and well-being. Our tenant rights and more issues that impact us is community. We are here today to continue push laws that benefit to all communities. And now I'm gonna talk to in Spanish, is my second language. Kimi dicen Huasqueji, that's my native language Mazawa. Buenos días a todos, mi nombre es Jovita Francisco Morales, soy la directora comunidad de base de una organización llamada Movimiento Inmigrante de Minnesota. MIM ha trabajado con comunidades latinas y latinos en todo el estado de Minnesota más de 15 años. Nos unimos para generar solidaridad y generar movimiento entre los latinos de Minnesota en torno a los problemas que nos afectan a nosotros. MIM ha estado apoyando e involucrado en la educación para todos, la democracia, derecho al voto, la salud y bienestar para nuestras familias, el desarrollo económico de negocios latinos, arte cultural y medio ambiente, accesos a las viviendas también y derecho a los inquilinos. Estamos hoy juntos para seguir empujando leyes que nos benefician a todas nuestras comunidades y junto con la organización MiLLA. Muchas gracias por ayudarnos a pasar la voz por su apoyo e involucramiento y crítica de nuestro éxito. Muchas gracias y ahora tengo el placer de introducir a Rosario y ella es la directora de Family Advocacy at Esperanza United. Thank you.
Gracias. Buenos días. My name is Rosario de la Torre. I'm the Director of Family Advocacy, and I am here on behalf of Esperanza United. Our mission is to mobilize Latinas to end gender-based violence. And today, I'm very proud to support the Minnesota Council of Latino Affairs legislative priorities, and we know that is not important, but essential for us. Esperanza United was founded in 1982 as an emergency shelter in St. Paul, Minnesota. 40 years later, we continue to grow our work in community strengths and wisdom, as we serve Latine locally and nationwide. Latines are one of the fastest growing populations in Minnesota, but the services available to us are not often there. And we need linguistic services, so this is essential our safety for our communities. At the heart of our mission is providing culturally specific and trauma-informed services. And we do that by hiring and training bilingual and bicultural advocates. Our hotline has been the lifeline for Latino individuals and their families. Like MiLLA, we champion initiatives that prioritize health and well-being. Well-being for survivors of gender-based violence means having culturally responsive care and being able to make choices. Let them make choices, not make choices for them. Today, I am very excited to introduce, we are working with Senator Alex Mann and Representative Polkowski, to create a task force to explore ending violence in the Latino community. This task force will provide recommendations to reduce or end violence in the Latino suburbs in Minnesota. The task force also will include LGBTQ communities. Recommended strategies to disrupt the pathways towards gender-based violence, identify key strategies to help prevent abuse before it occurs. Including outreach and communication to Latino populations, public campaigns to address and educate communities around effective communication, self-confidence, leadership, strong family supports, and healthy relationships. We support MiLLA's priority to improve education through our involvement in the local community, from financial independency classes to community work with youth to engagement and voice. Education is a powerful tool that helps Esperanza United prevent gender-based violence. Esperanza United comprehensive culturally specific approach not only supports but also amplifies the legislative priorities set for MiLLA. Together, we are building a place where Latina survivors access the tools they need, not just to survive but thrive. Our collective efforts help local Latinas build communities without violence, contributing to a stronger, more vibrant Minnesota for everyone. As we continue our journey towards creating safer, more inclusive communities and advocating for systematic change and to support survivors of gender-based violence, it is crucial to also focus on the foundation of our society, democracy and civic participation. With that in mind, I'm very excited to introduce our next speaker, Anastasia Belladonna Carrera. She is Executive Director of Common Cause Minnesota. Anastasia leads the charge in safeguarding democracy, promoting citizen ownership in our government, and empowering all Minnesotans to actively participate in a democracy and full power economy. Anastasia.
Gracias. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. In addition to what Rosario just mentioned, I'm also a very proud Puerto Riqueña. First and foremost, who, as many others have come to North America, accompanied my parents, who were seeking a better life for us. It's something that all Minnesotans dream of, right? An opportunity for a good life. However simplistic that is literally what brought many to North America, in addition to those of us from South Central America and also the Caribbean. Common Cause, for those of you that may not be acquainted with us, is a grassroots, nonpartisan citizens lobby and a watchdog organization making sure that when it comes to our democracy, we the people means all of us. Regardless of race, ethnicity, socioeconomic background, partisan affiliations, or zip codes, it still means all of us. We drive an innovative and comprehensive pro-democracy agenda in collaboration with our statewide democracy partners, like everyone here with MiLLA. We lead and define a democracy reform movement that puts us ahead of partisan ideologues and special interests, regardless of what those special interests may be. We work to co-create, and that is a very important word, co-create, right? We work to co-create an inclusive democracy where there is greater parity in how Minnesotans experience representation, right? Minnesota is celebrated for its high voter turnout, right? 1, 2, 3 in the nation all the time. And also, more importantly, the integrity of our election administration, which is something we should all be very, very proud of. However, as you've heard my partners here today share with you, this achievement is in shadows by the significant racial disparity in pretty much every single area that you can think of that would come within that good life that I talked about earlier. Our community has grown significantly to close to 400,000, as you heard Rodolfo mention. Since the 2020 census, we're in 2024, right? So, yay for Latinos. and there is a significant portion of us that are in fact eligible to vote. And you heard, right, we heard Irma talk a little bit about that earlier. The narrative that Latinos are ineligible to vote is a harmful myth. It is a myth. Most or all Latino Minnesotans are undocumented. That is a myth, right? Fact. The overall majority of Latino Minnesotans are eligible to vote. Fact. Fact. Overall, of the close to 400,000 Latinos in the state of Minnesota are eligible to vote. We do also have a mixed status family in our communities. We have to acknowledge and honor that. They may include young second-generation citizens facing barriers to full participation in our democracy. They may include permanent green card holders or DACA students. They may include immigrants with temporary protected status or with unauthorized legal status. But Latino Minnesotans and other impacted communities have at times had to wait for needed reforms for greater ballot access because their interests, our interests, are held hostage by political gamesmanship. Until recently, for those of you that are following this, until recently, do y'all remember when election omnibus bills were primarily cleanup language? For session after session after session, right? Until last year, when we had one of the most comprehensive, right, election bills that came out of the legislative body as a whole. Last session, Latino Americans saw those improvements, but we need substantive, meaningful reforms that go to the heart of co-creating a more inclusive democracy with greater parity in who is heard and represented in the policies and investment strategies coming from this Capitol building. For 2024, we're focused on reforms that go to the heart of co-creating a more inclusive democracy where Latino Minnesotans are also positioned to have our individual and collective political power and interests reflected in policy outcomes around wealth building on-ramps and long-term investments into our communities. We are working for greater parity in how Latinos, Minnesotans experience responsive representation within our democracy. And some of those key bills for us within the democracy area is the With Us, For Us amendment that would move a constitutional amendment to finally fix the redistricting process in the state of Minnesota. It is not okay that for 6 decades we, as Minnesotans, period, have lived under least change, court-limited voter district maps. Completely unacceptable, and it's time to change that now. So if you want to stand in allyship and truly focus on a multiracial democracy, here's your opportunity to do that. The Latino voter mobilization that some of us talked about, supporting nonpartisan initiatives dedicated to increasing Latino voter turnout and recognizing the critical role of Latino voices in shaping our democracy. We spoke to that in quite depth. I'm not going to keep going down on that. We are supporting small donor campaign finance reforms to make sure that our elected officials are responsive to us, not special interests, and also in using that reform as a way of giving us greater power amplified through the process. There's also support for ranked choice voting, the adoption of local ranked choice voting to promote a fair electoral process, allowing for greater access to diverse candidates. And I want to say thank you to Rosa, Executive Director with EMPLA, Rodolfo, Irma. It has been an honor to see your vision really amplified to like this entire group. It's been amazing. In closing, I urge us all to consider the profound impact of our work. The path to a more inclusive democracy is paved with the efforts of every individual here today, including the ones over there. Not just the ones up here. Let's continue to fight for a future where every Minnesotan, regardless of background, has an equal stake in our democracy. Thank you for your dedication and for being part of this critical journey. And as I move forward, I am pleased to pass this conversation on to Angel Morales, who is the Vice President of the Alliance for Chicano, Hispanics, and Latin Americans. Short, you might hear it as ACLA.
Yo soy Angel Morales. I worked for Education Minnesota and the NEA for about 37 years. I worked in lobbying, in negotiations, and all sorts of things to help our teachers teach our kids. But let me tell you, I was one of one. One of one in college. One of one in everywhere I went. One of one. And one that didn't know their history because I wasn't taught my history. So gracias. The lady that spoke about the history of Minnesota. Gracias for that. Because that makes me proud. My parents came to this country long ago. They're gone now. But all their kids had a great education. But again, we weren't taught about our culture. And that's a shame. That's a shame that this country has done that to us. We were slapped because we spoke Spanish. Let me tell you, that was in the 60s. And it still may be happening. Because, you know, you keep the kids in ESL. Shame on us. Shame on us for not speaking up. Yes, I am the vice president of the Latinos in Rochester. It's ACLA. And yes, I'm out advocating for those folks, for us, for la gente. Because we have to speak up. We can't remain silent. You know, we can talk about research, but again, it's what's in our hearts. I serve as an election judge, and again, I'm one of one. I need more people out there knocking on doors. It's hard to be out there knocking on doors when you don't know who's behind that door. Right. But again, it's when I'm out there with my people, they welcome me. And we have to convince them. They have to vote. Okay? So that's why ACLA is in support of the, now I gotta find my place. We are in support of the agenda for the Latino policy agenda with the Minnesota Latino Leadership Alliance. We can do this together. You know, I can read about how we need to do workforce development and education, but education is the best. That is number one, because those kids, if you just see their eyes, our kids need us. And that's the message I would leave here. So join us. Join the Minnesota Latino Leadership Alliance. And help us help those kids. And that's all I'm going to say. And I will give back the mic to Rosa for closing remarks. And thank you for listening.
That's very hard to follow. Thank you so much, Angel, for being here and arriving from Rochester. So this pretty much concludes our presentations, but we know that the press is here and you might have also questions, burning questions, so we welcome any question that you might have at this point. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you to our representatives as well for being here. So any questions?
I have a couple of quick questions about the museum It sounds like there's a site in mind for that already. Has that land been acquired? What's kind of the status of the plans for that?
Yes, there's a partnership happening with our great city of St. Paul, our capital city, with Park and Recs and the organization that is leading these efforts, ninguna, right now, the great support that we've had from our mayor's team to move forward with this legislation has been impeccable. We look at restorative justice. We look at leading from our capital city. We're the first barrio of Latinos as to create a dynamic force of implementation of arts throughout this whole state of Minnesota. We have the Port Authority right there on Harriet Island support, our County of Ramsey support, alongside with MiLLA, which is right here, and we're not backing down. We're demanding that space. When you talk about restorative justice and land rights within our indigenous community, we have the tribe support. We also have, when we look at the communities of Rondo, our Black historic community, and reconnecting what that looks like. We're talking about justice, not charity, when we talk about the history and arts in our movimiento. Thank you. And that location is Harriet Island. Woo!
And is that, so how much funding are y'all requesting for that? And is that through the, I assume that'd be through bonding?
Correct. We are looking through a general obligation, so the city of St. Paul in partnership with Ninguna and Mexico, $10 million request that has carried on to the 2024 legislation as we introduced it in 2023. Any further questions?
I have another one. This is something that I didn't hear touched on was interpretation, and I think someone might have touched on language access a bit. To my knowledge, the court interpreters are still on strike, asking for better pay. Is MILLA or any individual groups taking any action on that issue?
So again, Anastasia with Common Cause Minnesota, it was brought to our attention, and we're actually pulling together some folks, and MiLLA is front and center, as well as some of our other colleagues from other communities that are also impacted by that, to come together and figure out what's going to be our next sort of step in that process.
That's all I got.
Si se puede.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Una foto.